Number 10. Arrowverse. Similar to the comics, CW's Arrowverse has also had their own version of the Suicide Squad team. This version was as equally dark as the comic book version, though not quite as twisted. Tara Strong did the voice for the Harley we saw locked up in the show, but was not the actress that we briefly saw in those shots. This team used to be led by Amanda Waller and featured Deadshot, Shrapnel, and Bronze Tiger. No Harley. However, leadership was later taken over by Oliver Queen's partner John Diggle and his wife Lila Michaels, aka Harbinger, with the roster also being changed to feature Jericho, Cupid, and China White. Number 9. Blackest Day. We don't really get to see this version of the Suicide Squad, alas. We just get to hear instead about their tragic fate. In the DC House of Horror comic special, we get a collection of horror stories set in the DC world, and what we can safely assume are alternate spooky universes. Ooh. One story even features an alternate version of famed squad member Harley Quinn, where she is a ghost who haunts a man and drives him insane, making him kill tons of people, and all the while teasing him. Typical Harley. In the story Blackest Day, a zombie apocalypse has overrun the world, and Harley Quinn and all of the other members of Amanda Waller's Suicide Squad are confirmed dead by John Constantine, who sends a communique to the Justice League Watchtower before himself being overrun by zombies. It turns out that the Justice League themselves have already been overrun, with Flash infecting them with the virus out on the Watchtower. Number 8. Deceased Hope at World's End. While this series is a little more optimistic than most compared to some of the other DC stuff, it features two surviving members of the Suicide Squad, the new Suicide Squad, Aerie and Wink. In this alternate universe, the two characters are still alive but are faced with the semi-zombie apocalypse whose infection has reached everywhere via the life equation. This is one of those times when flight powers and functional wings like Aerie's really do come in more handy, even though I usually rag on that ability sometimes. Especially when you have all those unliving just trudging around down there on the ground. Unfortunately, while Aerie and Wink continue to stay safe while searching for Nightshade and Hive in issue number 4 of Hope at World's End, the pair run into an infected Black Adam, who can also fly, of course, and all of the infected population of Kahndaq. Number 7. Suicide Squad Black. This version of the team is still from Prime Earth but features a new roster of villains slash anti-heroes, combined with some familiar faces. The team was once again led by Amanda Waller and featured characters that she forced into action, like the main squad. The members throughout consisted of El Diablo, Azucar, Gentleman Ghost, Juniper, Tiamat, Wither, Clarion the Witch Boy, and Enchantress. A lot of mystical and magical characters on this team. This alternate version of the team referred to themselves as Suicide Squad Black, and appeared in their own limited series titled Suicide Squad Black Files. Number 6. David Ayer's Suicide Squad. Ayer's version of the Suicide Squad in the DCEU featured many familiar and recurring faces when it comes to the squad's members. Led by Amanda Waller, the team featured Harley Quinn, Deadshot, Enchantress, El Diablo, Captain Boomerang, and Katana. Not only was the film dark when it came to exploring the origins of many of these characters, their struggles, and all they had suffered through to become the villains they were today, but it was also dark because of the fact that Enchantress almost succeeded in kind of taking over the world. In the end, the Suicide Squad did manage to save the day, but had to eliminate Enchantress and the innocent June Moon, whom she possesses. Number 5. James Gunn's The Suicide Squad. Gunn's The Suicide Squad will actually be a soft reboot of the former team. His team and his feel of the Suicide Squad will likely be a lot different than Ayer's, although it still seems to have plenty of that Suicide Squad chaos that most fans enjoy. This time around, the team has a lot more members, reminding us once again of why exactly the team is referred to as the Suicide Squad, despite having the official government name of Task Force X. Because at any point, anyone can die. This team is sent on only the toughest missions, referred to as suicide missions, because for many they would be considered impossible. You can expect there will be more violence, explosions, and deaths in comparison to the first film. Considering that many of the members of the squad won't make it out alive, this film is likely to be a much darker take on the Suicide Squad when it comes to cinematics. Currently, the team roster includes Harley Quinn, Bloodsport, Peacemaker, The Thinker, Captain Boomerang, Blackguard, Polka Dot Man, Savant, King Shark, Weasel, Javelin, Ratcatcher 2, Soul Soria, TDK, and Mongol. Woo! With likely even more surprise members awaiting to be revealed throughout the duration of the film. Number 4. Telltale Games. In the Telltale Batman game, the Suicide Squad turn up once more, but this version of Amanda Waller's team is different when it comes to their roster. In the Telltale episode The Enemy Within, we learn that both Bane and Harley are on the team, and in a shocking twist, it's revealed that Catwoman is also part of the Suicide Squad. What? Which Waller is also using to apply pressure to Batman, which is pretty dark if you yourself are playing playing as the Dark Knight. And of course here, at this part, you are. Catwoman expresses, of course, that she did not join the team willingly and tries to warn Batman, but is shocked by Waller's collar before she can finish her sentence. Oh, and Amanda Waller also seems to want Batman to submit and also join her team. Pretty nuts. Number 3. Arkhamverse. Recently we have gotten another look at the Arkhamverse with the new Suicide Squad game. The Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. The new game was confirmed as being part of the established Arkhamverse and features Suicide Squad members Harley Quinn, King Shark, Captain Boomerang, and Deadshot taking on one of their darkest missions yet. Amanda Waller has instructed Task Force X this time around to take down the Justice League, which means yeah, somehow this group of misfits is going to have to try and take down heroes like Superman and Wonder Woman. Yikes. Number 2. Assault on Arkham. This animated Batman direct-to-video film, Assault on Arkham, was kind of what I was hoping we'd get when we got the initial Suicide Squad film in terms of plot. This alternate animated version of the team is led by the merciless Amanda Waller, who captures the criminals and forces them to complete missions in order to have years removed from their sentence. They have no say, however, in whether or not they want to be involved, and a skeptical KG Beast even challenges Waller's promise that should they misbehave or deviate from their missions, their heads will be blown off via bombs she had implanted in their necks. No collars this time around. KG Beast learns the hard way that Waller is telling the truth, and after the rest of the team watches KG Beast's head get blown off, they agree to cooperate. Seems like a smart move. Their mission is to break into Arkham and recover a piece of intel. The mission, of course, does get messy as the squad try to break away from Waller's control, and King Shark also ends up getting his head blown off. Number 1. Future's End. The Future's End alternate world is full of alternate versions of some of your favorite characters, and it also happens to include an alternate version of the Suicide Squad as well. They appear in the new Suicide Squad Future's End one-shot, once again reunited and led by Amanda Waller. However, at the beginning of the comic, it's revealed that this version of the Suicide Squad was split up and imprisoned in Bel Rev, before Amanda Waller broke in to reassemble her team. It's also revealed in this one-shot that while imprisoned, her team has been through hell. Harley Quinn has been forcibly given the steroid Venom while imprisoned, turning her into a hulking, muscle-bound version of herself who spends most of her day raging out. They attempted to give Deadshot a gun for an arm, amputating one of his arms and attempting to replace it, which didn't work, and Black Manta had his brain fried after they downloaded Deathstroke's fighting skills into his brain. Number 10. Harley Sin. Harley Sin was one of the applicants to join Harley's gang of Harleys. Her name is Constance Brand. While she didn't end up becoming one of Harley's Harleys, she did still remain in Harley Quinn comics, and for a time was one of her villains. She's less of an exact alternate and more of an obsessed fan with a grudge. Eventually she and Harley made peace, but recently she has reappeared in the Black Label comic Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey, where she was seen taking over Harley Quinn's place as the Joker's wannabe paramour. Here she was tasked with proving herself to the Joker by gruesomely killing a bunch of civilians who Joker felt had wronged him, including his mailman and an ice cream man who didn't happen to have Joker's favorite flavor in stock. It seems that she might once again be plotting to take down Harley Quinn, but this time at Joker's side. Number 9. Bizarro Harley. This version of Harley was a miserable version. She was created using Harley's genetic material and LexCorp's Bizarro creating device, or machine. Bizarro had originally wanted a Bizarro version of Lois Lane to be his perfect bride, but instead was willing to settle for his own version of Harley Quinn. Unfortunately, this version, being the opposite of Quinn, ended up being a huge stick in the mud and the exact opposite of fun. Unlike Harley, Bizarro Harley was a very serious and responsible person. Her speak was also a little weird for a Bizarro character, as well as not everything she said was fully reversed. In the end, Harley defeated her Bizarro self by putting her out of her misery and telling Bizarro Harley she was not lovable, trying to get her to prove she was by saying she was having a good time. This resulted in Bizarro Harley exploding because, you know, it's hard for Bizarros to say things like good and nice. But hey, at least she went out with a bang. Number 8. Injustice. While in the end Injustice ends up being a story of redemption for Harley Quinn as we see her become a full-fledged hero, we have to remember where this whole thing starts and why it is that Harley is working towards redemption in the first place. At the beginning of the story, Harley is still Mr. J's partner in crime, meaning she is also responsible for Lois Lane's brutal death at the beginning of this story, and Jimmy's, as well as all of the chaos that ensues afterwards. For all we know, Harley could have even helped Joker create this notorious plot. Also, poor Jimmy. I feel like because of all the crazy stuff that follows in Injustice, everyone forgets about his brutal death. Shot in the head, right through his camera. R.I.P. Injustice Jimmy Olsen. I'm sorry that you died. I always feel bad for him. We all forget about it. Not me, not today. Number 7. Steven Sijek's Harleen. Sijek's Black Label Limited series Harleen is one of the darkest alternates we've seen of Harley yet, as it allows us to dive deep into Harley's psychology in a way we don't usually get to in comics. In this version of Harley Quinn's origin story, a traumatic encounter with the Joker scars the young psychiatrist for life, forever changing her. She later is given funding for a project which could help in the early detection of sociopathic behavior, granting her access to Arkham Asylum and Black Penitentiary, allowing her to study criminals who were held there. She runs into the Joker and decides to face her fears of him by becoming his therapist. He proved to be the perfect patient, causing Dr. Quinzel to become obsessed and extremely protective of the Joker. Over time, also finding she was falling in love with him, losing her sanity as she became more and more infatuated with her patient. Number 6. Arkham Games. In the Arkham video games, Harley became a psychiatrist while training under Dr. Hugo Strange, which is pretty creepy to think about. Unlike most depictions of her as a psychiatrist, she did not this time around seem to have the best of intentions when it came to her patients, but more just a twisted and messed up fascination with the criminal mind. Here it was her ineptitude as a psychiatrist that allowed her to be manipulated by the Joker, not realizing that she was out of her league in treating him, and that he was using her. Dr. Quinzel quickly became obsessed with the Joker, falling madly in love with him, and willing to do anything that he asked of her, becoming his faithful servant who he often mistreated, and seeing Batman as the real villain of the story. Number 5. Haley Fitzpatrick. In Thrill Killer, Harley is instead Haley Fitzpatrick, a young teenage schoolgirl who is the paramour and partner in crime of the Joker. Still in this rendition. Though in this universe, her version of the Joker, Bianca Steeplechase, dies. A lot of people die actually in this alternate story, but not Haley. She is one of the few who survives. She ends up being put in therapy following the death of the Joker, as Bruce Wayne hopes she can be saved and redeemed. In the end, Haley is reported missing and has stopped attending her therapy sessions. Bruce notes that he should go looking for her first thing in the morning, as her family is worried sick. His commentary comes at us over top the images of Haley's parents and brother all shot dead, before cutting to an exterior of their family home up in flames, where we can see Haley dressed once again as Harley Quinn. She is holding a gun and dashing away from the burning home with a smile on her face, implying that in this universe, Harley as a teenage girl kills her own family in cold blood. Woo. Number 4. Neo Joker. In the series Batman White Knight, there are 2 Harleys. One is the real Harleen Quinzel, and one is an imposter, a fake if you will. The fake version of Harley apparently took over for the real Harley Quinn years ago when the Joker killed Jason Todd. That's when the real Harleen left and Marianne Drews stepped in. The Joker was so preoccupied with his schemes that he never even noticed. When he found himself cured of his psychotic nature and returned to try and make amends to Harley, Marianne was the first version he ran into. Marianne herself was of course also crazy and hated that Jack Napier, formerly known as the Joker, had apologized and promised to make amends for how he had mistreated Harley in the past. This version of Harley, Drew's version, would go on to become the Neo Joker, while Jack himself attempted to become a hero. Number 3. White Knight Harley Quinn. The other Harley Quinn from this alternate universe has a much brighter story. She is reunited with the love of her life, and now both of them are able to finally be together in a healthier setting, with him being cured. She agreed to help Jack Napier, and the two are married, both promising one another to be better to each other this time around. If you never thought you'd ship these two together, the Joker and Harley Quinn, this is the story that will likely surprise you in how much you actually love their relationship as it is written here. However, this fairy tale ending does not last for Harley. Jack Napier eventually gives into the darkness and becomes the Joker once more. Harley is left alone, pregnant with his twins, which she eventually gives birth to, and attempts to raise on her own. In a new series, we'll see a continuation of her story, and this time around it's likely to be more dark. In Batman White Knight Presents Harley Quinn, a new serial killer is out on the rise who seems to be connected to the Joker. The GTO and FBI turn to Harley for help with the case. To protect her children and her city, Harley agrees to help, but in order to do so, will be forced to face her dark past, while juggling motherhood and facing her romantic feelings for Bruce Wayne, aka Batman, who is currently behind bars. Will this alternate be able to look madness in the face once more and survive? We'll have to wait till October to find out. I'm really excited about the series. Hopefully it ends up happening. Please. Please let it happen. Number 2. Azzarello's Harley Quinn. This version of Harley I think is one of the darkest because she also happens to be one of the most quiet. We never get to read her words or hear her voice in the Brian Azzarello and Lee Bermejo 2008 graphic novel The Joker. Here Harley Quinn is painted as the Joker's solace, his girlfriend and partner in crime. She is mainly seen having intimate moments with the Joker and ruthlessly killing people alongside him. She takes joy in the trail of chaos, bloodshed, and violence that she and the Joker leave behind her though. The closest we get to seeing her speak is seeing her maniacal laughter. Number 1. Harley Quinn. In the DC animated film Justice League Gods and Monsters, Harley Quinn is known simply as Harley Quinn and is a serial killer who murders people, chops them up, and uses their parts to make her own version of the perfect family. Batman eventually tracks her down and she fights him with a chainsaw. In the end, however, she becomes injured by the chainsaw herself and attempts to surrender. However, this version of Batman himself is a monster. This version of Batman is the vampire and former scientist Kirk Langstrom. Instead of allowing Harley Quinn to surrender, he sinks his fangs into her neck, drinking her blood. Number 10. Chief Magnus. In the Noiroverse, the reality of Earth 90214, Eric Magnus is one of the worst kind of villains, and he doesn't even have any powers here. Much like how Spider-Man has a noir version of that comic, so does the X-Men. In the comic series X-Men Noir, we meet Chief of the NYPD Detectives, Eric Magnus, a crooked cop who aims to protect his family through using his power to control the criminal world, creating his own underworld society known as the Brotherhood. He attempts to encourage Charles Xavier to partner with him. Xavier runs a school for wayward youth, and Magnus would see them given a place in the criminal world via the Brotherhood. When Charles refuses, Magnus has one of his students killed. Number 9. Grand Inquisitor Enrique. Obviously, we have to talk about the dark alternate reality that is Neil Gaiman's 1602. Here, Magneto is known as Enrique, who was a young Jewish boy in Venice who was separated from his family and baptized by a priest and raised by the Catholic Church, forbidden from ever returning to his family again. He would go on to become the Grand Inquisitor, responsible for searching out, hunting down, and eliminating the witch breed, which in 1602 speak is another word for mutant. Enrique was forced to burn alive witch breed with visible mutations at the stake, despite being one himself, and really wanting to not do that. Number 8. Earth X. On the alternate reality of Earth 9997, which comes to us from the Earth X series, Magneto ends up as Toad's slave after being originally proclaimed a hero. In this reality, Magneto defeats all the Sentinels and rules in the newly formed Sentinel City thereafter. He invites Toad to join him, but Toad secretly resents Magneto for all the years of mistreatment he has suffered while under his leadership. When the vibranium levels in the Earth change, however, Magneto finds his powers have altered. In fact, Toad seems to have inherited his powerful magnetic abilities somehow due to this change, and Magneto is left depowered. Toad then enslaves Magneto for a time, and Magneto is forced to become Toad's jester. Both funny and dark. It's funny dark. Dark humor. Number 7. The Chaos Engine Trilogy. The Chaos Engine Trilogy is an X-Men novel that is a collection of 3 stories which explore alternate realities where 3 iconic Marvel villains use the Cosmic Cube in order to manipulate the world, finalizing their plans for world domination and shaping the world in their own image. Magneto himself is one of those iconic villains and is featured in the second book. The X-Men must fight to stop Magneto from enacting a plan which would result in worldwide mass murder, allowing Magneto to finally assert his dominance over the humans who have long toiled to oppress mutant kind. Of course, this is the sort of thing Magneto is usually plotting as a villain, but this time around he has the power of the Cosmic Cube to back him up, making this version of him even more frightening. Number 6. Age of Apocalypse. While the alternate version of Magneto in AOA got a few nice moments in this reality, he also had some pretty dark ones. In AOA, Magneto leads the X-Men, as Charles Xavier is killed when he sacrifices himself to protect Eric. Magneto and his X-Men are forced to face Apocalypse, who rules as a powerful tyrant, eliminating the weak and experimenting on others to create the strongest version of mutant. Magneto loses both of his children, Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, in battle in this reality, and also ends up locking himself up in prison after Apocalypse is defeated due to it being revealed that he withheld information from the rest of the X-Men and the new mutant branch of government. However, this is also the reality where he finds love with fellow mutant Rogue. The two of them even have a child together. In the end, however, both he and Rogue are brutally murdered by the AOA version of Logan, Weapon X, who later betrays the X-Men by becoming the new Apocalypse. Number 5. Big Town. During a Fantastic Four What If miniseries entitled Big Town, Magneto appears as one of the villains teamed up to take down enemy Reed Richards. The crazy thing about this story and this alternate Magneto of Earth 110 is that he doesn't attempt to take out Mr. Fantastic alone. He is joined by Hulk, Namor, Doctor Doom, Ultron, of course his own Brotherhood of Mutants, which this time around includes Storm and Wolverine surprisingly, and Red Skull. Yep, Magneto has been established as a Holocaust survivor, which granted could not be true in this alternate reality, we don't fully know, but we can likely assume that he is, as it's not singled out as being a difference. Alternate reality stories tend to enjoy flaunting any differences, as that's, kind of what they're all about. So yeah, Magneto, a Jewish World War II survivor, a Holocaust survivor, and Red Skull, an established German World War II soldier, team up to take out Reed Richards in this story, which is admittedly pretty dark, because that's not a thing you'd think Magneto would do normally. Number 4. X-Sentinels. One of the stories in X-Men Millennial Visions tells us of how over time, as the X-Men and other mutants like Magneto aged, they slowly transitioned to become cyborgs, until they were just full-on robots, with their consciousness just downloaded into their cyber bodies. As time went on, their mental faculties began to break down due to the overload of information over time, basically causing their brains to kind of short circuit. All they could remember clearly was their mission to protect mutant kind. Clinging on to this last principle, the cyborg mutants become X-Sentinels, who instead of hunting down mutants, would hunt down and exterminate humans. So in a way, they became their own worst enemy. Number 3. X-Men films. What we know of Eric's past in the X-Men films is enough to convince you just how dark of a character and story he saw there. Eric was Jewish and living in Germany with his family during World War II. As a young boy, his powers started to manifest, but not strong or soon enough to save his family from being put into concentration camps. He was studied by a doctor who was allied with the Germans, a man we'd come to know as the famous Sebastian Shaw. And when Eric could not perform one of the tests that Shaw gave him, Shaw murdered his mother in front of him, hoping that the rage would help to unlock the full potential of Eric's powers. This is also the reality where much later on Eric would settle down and start a family. Eric was married and he and his wife had a daughter together, following his adventures in the film Days of Future Past. Unfortunately, after coworkers discovered that Eric is actually Magneto, witnessing his powers, he ends up being apprehended by the Polish authorities, who accidentally kill his family when his daughter's mutant powers begin to manifest. Yikes. Poor Magneto. Number 2. Days of Future Past, but the comic book version. Magneto from the alternate reality of Earth 811 has a pretty bleak life after the Sentinels take over the country. At first free from the mutant concentration camps, Magneto is aiming to find his daughter Scarlet Witch, who has gone missing. When Wolverine, Jubilee, and Magneto do find her, they discover she's being held prisoner and used as a weapon by the Hellfire Club. They free her, but she ends up dying anyways, and during the fight, the bones in Magneto's legs are completely shattered, leaving him unable to walk. When finally captured by the Sentinels and placed in a mutant concentration camp, which you think would be hard enough for the poor man, he ends up sacrificing his life to help the X-Men and Franklin Richards escape so they can hopefully follow through with their plan to alter reality and avoid this whole apocalyptic fate. Number 1. Ultimate Magneto. Magneto in the Ultimate Universe of Earth 1610 is the most extreme and the most dark, like many other Ultimate versions. This is the reality where both Magneto and Xavier, when they first meet, decide that mutant kind is meant to replace humankind and form the Brotherhood. Here, a young Eric also kills his father when his powers first manifest, though in his defense, his father was trying to shoot him dead at the time. Eric instinctively causes the bullet to turn back around on his father, fatally wounding him with the reversed gunshot. This is also the reality where when some refused to join Magneto in his cause, he simply responded by killing them. During Ultimatum, his severe stance on how to best deal with the oppression of mutant kind caused him to kill millions of people, including his former friend Xavier. He snapped Xavier's neck and also killed other famous X-Men including Beast and Nightcrawler.